What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am your host, Ben Burnett, and joining me, as always, your other host, Mr. E. Lewis Ezekiel. Lewis, my pal, my bud, my friend, how are you this fine Tuesday evening?
I'm doing great. We're starting to, you can tell the fantasy season is heading into that final stretch. I saw the sun this morning rising when I got into school, which was, a nice thing. It kind of smells like spring out here. A lot of the snow is melting. So I know there's going to be a lot more. It's winter's never done in Michigan until we get that April snow. But, I'm cautiously optimistic for the changing of the seasons here.
Hell yeah, my guy. It's snow and then not snow in just repeated intervals on the East Coast of Canada. But yeah, some days feels like snow, or some days feels like winter. Some days feels like April, feels like May. That's just February, I guess. But let's get into the fantasy hockey analysis and chat about the latest headlines in the fantasy hockey world. And to do that, I think what we want to do to start, Lewis, is kind of rehash some stuff we talked about last week. I know that this will be probably like the fourth or fifth episode of a Keeping Karlsson podcast feed show to mention Tyler Toffoli, but another update since Brian and Elon mentioned him on Sunday's Mega Show. I'm going to hand this one off to you, my friend. Why don't you give us the notes on sort of, we wanted to go back and look at a few things that we had touched on last week and just sort of update the folks on how things have shaken out.
Yeah. And, the Toffoli discussions will continue until more interesting trades are made. So we're stuck until we see some more interesting stuff shake down. But Toffoli was still on line one, but he did get some time on power play one. So that was one thing that we were looking for and hoping to see from him. He did manage to score an empty net goal. So not exactly the kind of production, it's obviously every goal counts the same in terms of fantasy. But maybe you'd rather see it happen in live game action before you really want to put your faith in him. But I know Brian and Elon were kind of out on Toffoli. I think I'm still in a little bit. They were kind of dismissive on the Sunday show, and I understand where they're coming from. But if he is going to get that power play one opportunity, I think that still indicates that he's working his way up. Maybe he can get onto that line too also. How are you feeling on Toffoli here as we sort of follow this drama?
Yeah, I mean, seeing him on the top power play unit the other day was really exciting for me. And so I'm in. I you know what? I actually really agreed with them over the weekend that he's not really a hold. I was in the same place as them, given the information that we had at the time. But seeing him on that top power play over the weekend kind of has reinvigorated my approach. I'm definitely not saying you need to hold on to Tyler Toffoli. There are reasons why you might why you might need to cut bait. And, we talked about a few players last week that I was interested in, Dodonov, Brossoit, Toffoli. I don't really have an issue with teams in shallower leagues cutting bait on any of those guys, or in the cases of the Knights, I think that those two are droppable in pretty much anywhere. But Toffoli, to me, is still somebody who you could see having some value if he's able to hold on to that top power play unit. So for now, I'm not out all the way on Toffoli, but yeah, it's 3.5 minutes on power play one is a lot better than what he was getting before, and that means that after starting both of the first two games playing about 12 minutes with the Flames, he added 3.5 minutes on the power play, and he finished with 15:40. So just 12 and 10, basically the same amount of time exactly as the first two games, plus 3.5 minutes on the power play. So I don't know. Things could keep going up, right? I guess, I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking myself into circles.
No, those are quality minutes, and I think it might be a reason why I would lean towards hanging on to him and seeing how things go for a little while longer. Another couple guys that we were talking about last week are Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark. Ullmark had a pretty uninspiring loss against the fairly low-scoring New York Islanders, and Swayman went out and shut down Colorado. Now, to be fair, all of, Boston was just outplaying Colorado all over the ice. They really were way ahead in shots until kind of score effects started to come into play with Colorado down big. But Swayman played really well. He had 28 stops, only allowed one power play goal to Nathan MacKinnon. If that's all you let Colorado have, you're having yourself a pretty good night there. And suddenly, we see Swayman taking the lion's share of starts here, having gotten 4 of the last 5 games. If unfortunate, definitely if you were someone who sort of dropped him when he went down to the AHL after Rask came back. But if you're able to jump on him after that Rask retirement announcement, you're feeling pretty good about yourself at this moment. And it might be interesting to see if he can possibly go in kind of a Husso direction, where he's able to, start taking more shots, or getting more starts, I should say, even though you've got the other goalie as the higher paid contract guy. I'm learning that maybe there are some coaches out there and maybe there are some situations where, it's not all just about the contract, and it might be worth, seeing what some of these guys, can do, and the coaches might be willing to give them a little more leash, contract or no.
Absolutely. I think that Swayman is a guy I'm definitely intrigued by. I mean, I compared the situation in Boston to the one that has been there the past few years with the Halak and Rask situation. And I was kind of dismissive of Swayman for that reason, just because we've seen Bruce Cassidy defer to the 50-50 start model in the very recent past, even, to start this season. I'm not convinced that they go away from that for long, but the fact that Swayman has gotten so much that, the fact that Cassidy has gone with the hot hand at all is very intriguing in the short term. So not convinced it's here forever, but definitely interested while it is here for now.
So besides Husso, we've also seen another young goalie maybe seize control of the number 1 spot in a goal crease, and that would be in Dallas with Jake Ettinger seeming to lock down that number 1 spot, at least for the time being, and playing extremely well. Between Swayman at 58% owned and Ettinger at 64% owned, who would you feel a little more confident about grabbing if they happen to be lying around in free agency in your league?
It's kind of a coin flip for me right now. I guess I think that Ettinger has more opportunity just because I still have those remnants of fear that Boston reverts to its 50-50 split. And Allmark, to me, represents a bit more of a threat than Braden Holtby, but I wouldn't, put any sort of money down unless you were giving me very nice odds one way or the other.
Sure. And I guess as much as I love to hear myself talk, you actually summed up what I wanted to say pretty well. I think I would give a slight edge to Ettinger. I think there's, a good reason that he's 6% more owned. I do think that, there's less of a threat that he loses that spot. So I think we can move along from them. But I think that, I'm with you on that observation.
Well, let's go to Minnesota next, where we wanted to chat about an injury. Matt Zuccarello out tonight. Marcus Foligno jumps on line 1 with Ryan Hartman and Kirill, of course, Kaprizov. As I look at my score sheet, I now have Marcus Foligno has made an enemy for life with me because Kaprizov has not yet scored, and we're halfway through the third. So, get it together here, Foligno. I blame you for dragging my boy Kaprizov down with you.
Yeah. Hopefully Zook is okay. Obviously, he's been out to an outstanding year. Big loss, especially coming so close to puck drop. I was one of, I'm sure, a number of people who were not able to move him into injured reserve before the game started. Certainly, could hurt that top line with the chemistry that Zuccarello and Kaprizov have had together. Might be a good opportunity for Kevin Fiala, who will get some Unit 1 power play time. He's got a goal here on Tuesday night. So, a nice little spot for him. But I would not be rushing to go out and grab Marcus Foligno. I don't think, he's not gonna, be someone necessarily who is going to be, when you've got Hartman and, Kaprizov out there, I think he's definitely the third option, even with Hartman being sort of a relatively recent riser, in terms of being someone with some offensive upside.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't grab Foligno if you are if you're in a league where he hasn't really been rostered all season. If you're in a deeper league and he's been dropped because he's been cold lately, he might represent. I was giving him a hard time, and I appreciate you kind of bringing me back down to earth and mentioning Zook. And of course, I hope he's okay. One of my favorite little lizards in the league. But Marcus Foligno is a guy who his banger stats make him quite valuable in deeper leagues. And he did have a pretty solid start to the year. Like 17 goals is probably more than I thought he would have on the full season, or around where I thought he might finish this year. So for him to have put that up so far through like 40 games or whatever it's been, a very nice little season for Marcus Foligno. So deeper leagues, I'm not uninterested.
All right, Ben. How about another outjury that we can talk about here? A big one in New Jersey.
Absolutely. One of my favorite boys, Dougie Hamilton, the museum lover, is apparently back in the lineup, or expected to be back in the lineup Thursday night when the Devils hit the ice. Dougie Hamilton has been out for, I think, about 4 weeks now with a broken jaw. He's ready to come back and spit that fire through the wire. Could be nice for Hughes and Heishier and the entire Devils power play. Probably curtains for Damon Severson, who should have been dropped ahead of this past last week, I think, when the Devils have had just 2 games this week and then 2 games the week before. So Severson probably shouldn't have been still on rosters prior to this, but if you have been holding on to him, now is a good reminder. Drop Damon.
Yeah, he had a nice little run in there, and always nice to see somebody step up when you lose a big player like Hamilton. But I think the big news here is definitely that Hamilton owners will be able to breathe a big sigh of relief as the big defenseman gets back into play. And yeah, hopefully covering up that face a little bit, making sure he stays safe. And just as we have one defender in red and white coming back, we have one who is exiting. Tony DeAngelo left the game on Monday with an upper body injury not long into it, and that opened up an opportunity for Jacob Slavin. Slavin was mentioned by Brian and Elon on the Sunday Mega Show. He already had 7 points in the previous 8 games, counting Monday's game. Played 29 minutes in that Monday game with TDA's early exit. He notched an assist and played 83% of the available power play minutes. DeAngelo has been on pace for 32 power play points, and while Slavin doesn't have that same rep as a power play specialist, he is slotting in as the quarterback of the 6th best power play in the league, and he's likely to get in on some of that action. There aren't many, if any, power play 1 defensemen just lying around on waiver wires. So while Slavin is rostered in 62% of leagues, that does mean there's about a third of leagues out there where he still can be grabbed, and you should definitely be jumping on him. I think that's a great opportunity, at least for the next little while until we see the extent of DeAngelo's injury. And that number should certainly climb, at least for the remainder of the week here, since that's a very nice opportunity for a guy who already was producing quite well without that power play 1 deployment.
I don't even know. I would be shocked to see it climb too much further, because I feel like if you're rostered in 62% of leagues before an injury like this, what leagues are you really not, like, who is not paying attention before that will be interested now? Anyway, that's neither here nor there really for our fantasy hockey podcast, but just a thought that I have.
I definitely see your point, but yeah, it's worth maybe checking to see if he's out there lying around. I was able to find him in one of my shallower leagues, so excited to be able to toss him in, especially since I was the DeAngelo owner who now has to put him on injured reserve.
Coming up, we are going to chat about a couple of players who have been hot, a few more who have been cold. You're listening to Short Shifts.
All right, and Ben, I want to take a second here to talk to you about HelloFresh, our sponsor for this week's episode. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh has fit and wholesome recipes for satisfying and nutritious meals that you can feel good about, with 6 recipes per week to choose from, including low-calorie and carb-conscious options. It's always nice to be able to go on there and kind of balance, what particular flavors do we want? What can we get that's going to be kind of a healthy meal? As we're heading out of our winter hibernation, it's been nice to get a little more active, and we're thinking a bit more about keeping ourselves healthy. We had a really good Korean barbecue pork the other day. Really, really good sesame seeds and green onions and all that good stuff. HelloFresh cuts back on time spent in the kitchen with meals ready in around 30 minutes or less. It's really nice. I can get home from work. I get out a little before my wife does, so I'm able to get home and get things going, and she can come in the door, and I've looked like I have, been working away really hard, and it makes me look good. HelloFresh does, to have my wife come home and I've got a nice meal on the table. You can go to HelloFresh.com/KeepingK16 and use code KeepingK16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Again, you can go to HelloFresh.com/KeepingK16 and use that code KeepingK16 for up to 16 free meals and free gifts. If you want to be the one who your significant other or spouse or just yourself can impress whoever is in your life with your cooking talents there. With delicious meals that you can make quickly and make you look like a really good cook, it's no wonder that HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit.
Welcome back to Short Shifts. And Lewis, I want to start on a team that no one's really given a thought about for a few months now. And we mentioned them, as an afterthought, talking about teams with new coaches recently. And we sort of talked about how, even though there was no clear winner of the Martin St. Louis hire, there was no clear winner of Tyler Toffoli being traded. We were waiting to sort of see how lines shook out. We thought that perhaps there might be an opportunity for players to build on the new coach bump and to take advantage of the new opportunity. And it looks like the top line in Montreal, since Toffoli's absence, is really starting to click. Cole Caufield, Josh Anderson, and Nick Suzuki combined for 3 goals against the Leafs Monday night, brought back the magic from last year's playoff run. Caufield has gone hot all of a sudden with 3 goals and 6 points in his last 3 games. 5 of his 6 goals on the season have come in the past 6 games. When I look at the numbers, I definitely see it as a shooting regression back to the norm rather than, a player suddenly unlocking 70, 80 point potential this season. But if Caufield can keep confident and the rest of that line can sort of, find some chemistry, find a way to play together under St. Louis, I could see them all being fantasy relevant the rest of the season. So, Josh Anderson has been, as usual, the best version of himself with all the shots, all the hits lately. Nice to see all 3 of those guys putting up points. If they are available in deeper leagues by now, I think you should start to get them onto your roster and see if the hot streak continues long enough to make a difference for you in the playoff home stretch.
Yeah, definitely. I think you just triggered the whole parent class of people who listen to this episode with a Daniel Tiger find a way to play together. That definitely was my immediate reaction. But yeah, I think that's really great for that top line. I think it's cool for Cole Caufield, who probably, spent his time growing up being, compared to Marty St. Louis or, being told to watch his game and sort of see how he plays. So it's cool to have them, now united together. Josh Anderson has always been a fave of mine. One of the first things I wrote when we kind of started working together before we were podcasting and we were writing stuff, for like the Cupful fan magazine was writing about Josh Anderson. So I think it's awesome that, he's caught some fire here and hopefully he keeps it going. Although don't love that I'm up against him this week, but yeah, it's exciting to have Montreal on this 3-game win streak and just sort of have things be, have some optimism there. For a team that, lest we forget, made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, improbably though it may have been. So yeah, I think it's great to see this little run that they've put together. And yeah, some positive regression for Cole Caufield was definitely something that we had hoped for and seemed to be in the cards. But, it took that coaching change maybe to unlock it and have it come along.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Lewis. Why don't you take us on to our next streak?
All right. So here's another hot player who's out there at only 41% rostered. Adrian Kempe, I think, makes for an appealing ad that could be worth streaming at least for the 3 remaining games this week and beyond. I suspect his reduced ownership is in part due to the break that LA saw from February 2nd to the 15th, but with 5 points in the last 2 games, I think you should be taking advantage of your league's inattentiveness if he is still lying around in free agency. Kempe's been tied to Kopitar for most of the season, and he's getting in on the lion's share of available power play minutes. And while his 16.5% shooting percentage is the highest of his career, even if he does start regressing down towards the mean a bit, he's shooting 3 times a game on average, up 0.7 shots per game from his previous career best. So hopefully some of that increased shot volume should help float his value, even if he starts converting closer to his career average of around 11%. Besides the 3 remaining games this week, the Kings play 4 times next week, including visits to Columbus and Buffalo. So definitely someone who has a lot of value in terms of volume and has a lot of value in terms of deployment. I was pretty surprised to see how limited his, ownership was given his recent really nice run of production.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised to see Adrian Kempe's rostership numbers so low. A guy who was really hot at times last year and then would go extremely cold. And then all of a sudden you would see those shot numbers start to tick up. You'd see like a 7-shot game, a 3-shot game, a 6-shot game, a 4-shot game. And then he'd start peppering the net and you would see the Kings accelerate his minutes or move him up the lineup, throw him on the top power play once in a while, give him top line minutes. And this year he has been able to keep that top line deployment and top power play deployment through the entire season, which has been fantastic to see. So Adrian Kempe, a guy who, on pace for 60 points, no reason to me that he shouldn't be rostered in all 14 team leagues and probably a fair number of 12 team leagues too, especially those that reward shots. 3 shots per game is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that shooting number I think really stood out to me. And as a big reason why I think we should have some faith in him. Yes, probably shooting too hot right now, but still can float that value a little bit with that increased shooting that he's been doing lately.
All right, Lewis, we have one more segment here tonight, and we wanted to chat about a couple of players down in Tampa Bay. Why don't you tell us about our last cold streak tonight?
Sure. So, one reason we haven't been talking Tampa that much is because they really have not played very much at all. And they only have 2 games this week. And a couple of players I wanted to discuss were Andre Palat and Anthony Cirelli. Each of those guys is mired in a slump of 1 point in the last 5 games. In the most recent game, Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point played together as Tampa Bay overloaded that top line in their game way back on the 15th. And while the latest practice lines do show Palat back with Point and Cooch, Cirelli was way down on line 4 with Ross Colton and Radish. Palat may be worth holding on to at that line 1 deployment if you've waited this long, but I think Cirelli at this point should be waiver fodder. He's, had some bursts of brilliance this season, but I think that overall, not worth holding on through this, extended segment, especially if he's going to be down in 4th line deployment and not getting anything on the power play. Palat may be worth holding because they do have a nice schedule next week. It's unfortunate that he's not participating a ton of offense at even strength, but he's getting power play 2 deployment, and hopefully being reunited with those top guns on line 1 could be helpful. He might be an appealing hold just because Tampa plays 4 times next week, including games against Ottawa, Detroit, and Chicago. So there should be some opportunities to score. Just remains to see whether Palat will be one of the people getting in on some of those goals.
Yeah, it's this is kind of what we thought might happen when Nikita Kucherov came back, right? And the Bolts have shown that they're not really committed to holding Palat in that top line, top power play spot that he thrived in 2021. So I think that he's a guy who, there will be hot streaks because he's playing with 2 of the best players in the world at even strength, but not somebody who you need to hold on to. Fortunately, he does give you the back end stats when he is in the lineup typically, but somebody who I'm happy to stream out if there's somebody hot on the waiver wire. A guy like Matt Boldy, we've gotten a lot of questions about the past couple days, and I would say in most situations the solution has been add Matt Boldy. But hit us up if there are questions that you have about your waiver wire and guys who you're considering dropping or picking up to drop Palat.
Yeah, definitely. He sometimes can be one of the more boring players to hold in fantasy, but the opportunity that he has there, especially with next week's schedule, I think does make him someone that you maybe want to hold on to for a little while longer, or could even run out and grab if he's been dropped in your league.
All right, Lewis, that is all the time that we have for tonight's show. For myself, Ben Burnett, thanks so much for listening. And Lewis, thanks so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Great to be back to start a new week here. And thank you, all of our listeners, for joining us. Please make sure you are subscribing on your podcast app so you always get an update when there's a new episode. You can follow us on Twitter at ShortShiftsKK, as well as Brian and Elon at Keeping Carlson. Dave Benton of the Stream Scheme can be found at NHL Stream Scheme. I also recommend you follow at Game Day Lines, at Game Day Goalies, and at Game Day News for all of your up-to-the-moment items of interest. You can visit the great sites where we research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, and our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.